Hello, everyone. Welcome to Tech with Peter and Banugo. And today's live stream, I'm joined by Jay Bell, CTO of Trellis. And Jay, happy to meet you, or happy to chat again. It's been a while.
Yeah, we've chatted a couple of times. Yeah, I know things are going great up here, up northern Canada. It's actually not northern Canada, but everyone thinks Canada's up north.
Where about in Canada are you based in?
I'm like 4 hours from Vancouver, if you know where
Yeah,
Vancouver is.
know the name, yeah, but not
Yeah,
where.
west coast of Canada.
Yeah, it's been a while though. I think the last time we spoke, it was also about Fly.io. I think you had some questions then when you were migrating.
hmm Yeah, that was
But
before we did the migration, I think.
yeah, and I think it's been quite a couple of months, maybe five, six or more.
Yeah, we started the migration earlier this year, I think. I started looking into it kind of January, started doing some stuff in February, moving some environments over. So it's been a good chunk of the year that we've been working on the migration. We've been mostly migrated for 3 or 4 months now, maybe
Okay.
something like that, across three different environments with most of our services we use on Fly now. Most of our APIs and services and stuff like that, like our Redis cache and stuff.
Yeah, I think the Redis one was the one I was curious to see that you finally moved because I think you had issues with Upstash. I think you tried Upstash and because of the way Bull works, it was taking too much bandwidth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's definitely some quirks because Upstash is a serverless offering. You pay per usage, like pay per command kind of thing. So certain ways people are using it may not work with the pricing model they have. They've since made some changes. So they've made a couple of changes. One was um, you can pay a flat rate now for an Upstash instance, and it's not billed per command or billed per 100,000 commands. It's just like $10 a month kind of thing. And then the other change they made was not billing for empty commands. So sometimes when services like pull Redis for some reason, you won't be charged for certain set of the commands because they're empty effectively. So they've made a couple of
Yeah.
changes to make it a little bit better, but yeah.
Yeah, I think also those instances they now run those fully on Fly and they are
Mm-hmm.
sort of always on.
Yeah. So they run within Fly's infrastructure. So when you spin up a Redis or an Upstash Redis, you actually connect to it via like your private Flycast network. So they'll make a connection kind of thing between their servers and your servers that are all hosted within Fly. So it's all within that like private WireGuard network, I think. So it's called.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway, we I think we're diving right in, but maybe we can you can introduce yourself a bit for the
Sure.
audience, so so we don't do this like a casual chat.
Yeah, totally. Let's give the listeners some background, I guess.
What do you
So
do?
yeah. So as Peter said, my name is Jay Bell. I'm the CTO and co-founder of a company called Trellis.org. We're a fundraising platform for charities and nonprofits. We've been working on this for, I want to say, 7 years, something like that now. So it's been an exciting 7 years. We're growing really fast. Other than what I do at Trellis, so I do like the fullest of stack stuff. So I'm our DevOps engineer. I'm our part QA. I'm an individual contributor. I do planning and organization and specifications and software documents, and I do like all the stuff because we're a small team. But then like outside of Trellis, I'm a Angular GDE, a Google developer expert. I've been involved in the NX ecosystem for a very long time, so I'm really um, supportive and into the whole like open source area. I do a lot of open source work, fun little side projects. I'm always working on something. That's how you and I originally met, Peter.
Yeah.
You also like do some indie hacking, and then I'm like, I play around with things sometimes, and we chat every so often about what we're working on and what kind of stuff, what kind of problems we're having.
Yeah, I think it sounds like a blessing, to work in the small team where you get to touch every pieces and think on a lot of things that you find interesting.
Yeah, it's nice. I've never actually worked. I've never had a real tech job, as I like to say.
Okay.
I've always started my own companies. So I don't actually know what it's like to work at a big company, but I've heard stories. And I think I like working at a small company more. There's me, 3 developers, and then 1 like product manager / designer. So there's like effectively 5 of us on the product team. That's it. So we can move
Quite
like
small.
we can move really fast, and everybody's full stack. And yeah, we churn out stuff. It's great. It's super fun. So flies honestly helped us a lot to speed up our delivery and simplify a lot of things for us. It's just so much simpler than every other option out there. It's wild.
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting to use. And I mean, working for yourself or working being an employee, I think they have both their pros and cons. Also depends
Mm-hmm.
on personality. Some people are used to getting told what to do or like some kind of orderly manual to follow, as an employee. And
Yep.
sometimes it works. For me, it works well in some organizations, but some not. And these days, I'm trying to carve out like a highly profitable path as an indie or solo dev or solopreneur. So it's quite a journey for me at the moment, trying to transition, but it has its specs as well.
It absolutely does. Yeah, I mean, like, being an entrepreneur, I effectively am always working, right? As the CTO and the co-founder, like if something goes wrong, it's on me, right? Like
Yeah,
the buck stops with me, really. So it's it's gotten easier in recent years, thankfully, as we've grown and we've become more stable, and I have a team around me and stuff like that, where I can actually go and take some time off. But like at the end of the day, it's my baby, right? The
yeah.
company's my baby, so I'm always working.
And have you been affected by some of the recent fly outages?
Oh
Uh,
yeah. Oh yeah.
how critical
Yep.
has that been for you?
Uh, Not good, let's say. Yeah, not good at all. Um, it was it was bad. It was definitely really bad. I mean, there's the 2, I think the 17th and the 23rd. I've spoken to Fly about it since. But the 17th one wasn't like the worst thing in the world because it was like 45 minutes. But the
Yeah.
one on the 23rd was like all day. Like the whole incident, if you go take a look at the status page, it was like 8.5 hours or something like that kind of thing for it to actually
Wow.
get back to completely stable. So, and it's some of the same customers were affected on both. So it really did not look good for us,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
And what was the one on the 23rd? Was that the one with the proxy? I think there was one with an issue
Mhm.
with the proxy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
They said that they're going to be, so I think their infrastructure blog has something on it already,
oh,
but they're
good.
going to be they're going to be writing like a really in-depth explanation of what happened. I'm not sure what I can share from the email that I received from them. So I'll wait. I'll let everybody wait for the actual official blog post to come out. But they did say they were going to write up a whole kind of like post-mortem of what happened and what went wrong and what they're doing to make sure it doesn't happen again. Because when that happened, like my executive team was like, what are we doing to prevent this? Like, do we move? We were considering, and I was investigating solutions to move off of Fly like the next day because
Wow.
it affected us that badly, right? Like
Yeah.
when our customers are paying us thousands of dollars a month or a year, right? Tens of thousands of dollars a year, like they expect a whole different level of service and things. Sorry, our cloud hosting went down isn't an acceptable,
True.
response, right?
And like 8 hours is like spending the whole working day for
Yeah,
the people
yeah.
you serve.
Luckily, that one wasn't their whole system went down. They just had issues with the internal routing. So if you were using, if say you were sending requests over the private Flycast network, then those would have problems. But thankfully, external requests were still working. So
Uh,
like the app was still usable. There was just like certain operations that weren't working. Like for example, we have one server that scales to 0. It doesn't anymore because I implemented static durability or static stability. But we have one server that effectively just prints PDFs. It's a server that spins up, starts up a Chrome instance with Puppeteer, prints a HTML page into a PDF file, and then saves it. And that's what we send out to like the donors for our charities, for like the itemized receipts and all that kind of stuff, right? But that's not connected to the internet. It doesn't have a public IP address because there's no reason for it to, right? So we communicate with that server. All of our other servers communicate with that one over the Flycast network, their internal network. And the internal network is what was having issues. So like our PDF printer server was effectively failing because we couldn't access it.
Okay. I think the way their proxy work, they have a Fly proxy for the public internet, and there's another proxy for the Flycast network, and I think they're quite similar. But I mean, I would look forward to what they share. At the moment, I don't have any primary critical workload on
That's good.
Fly. So if it's down, I'm fine. Sometimes I get an email about like, I think now when the machine or the host machine is very bad, you have to manually move. So sometimes when I do that, I either just kill the app and deploy it somewhere again, and I don't worry too much about how much data I've lost. So
there's like, sometimes they have issues like the depot builders aren't working, or the machine API is not working, or, like maybe one of their developing regions is having networking issues. Like all of that stuff, I don't really care about too much, right? Like obviously I would like it to be fixed and working perfectly, right? But I understand they're a growing company. Like I get that, right? Like they're effectively a startup when it comes to the cloud hosting. Like the cloud world, right? So I understand there's going to be some growing pains, but the ones I'm not okay with are like when production's affected.
Yeah.
I just looked. They do have a really in-depth article on the infrastructure blog. So if anybody's interested in that, you can go check out. It's linked. If you just go to fly.io, their infra logs, there's a link for it up at the top of the page. So you can go check that out. And there's a really in-depth postmortem there, it looks like now.
Yeah, I wonder how what that confidence instills to other customers. I mean, I wouldn't really consider them that new any longer, because I mean, I think they've been for quite a while now. I know they had issues, I think maybe 2 years ago, when they started having a lot more users and traffic, and scaling, adding more machine became a problem. So maybe now as well, with the whole exodus of moving away from Vercel or Netlify because of deal, and going to things like Fly.io or like Hertzner. So maybe that's also bringing in a lot more traffic, and they have to get more machines. So that could also be it. But
growing pains, right? As companies scale, it's nearly impossible to be prepared and ready for everything that you're going to encounter as a growing company. So like there's a certain amount of grace that I will and have afforded to them, right? But if production keeps going down, right? Like if our production servers continue to have issues, then another conversation is going to have to be had, right?
Yeah. And how so with AWS, did you have this issues? Like how often with this kind of downtime? No.
Never. I think I can remember one case off the top of my head where I think like S3 had issues or something like that in one of the US regions. But, it's a little different because when like S3 has issues, for example, like half the internet goes down. Right. So like
but
at some point I'm going to have to realize that it can't be 100%. Like, and AWS doesn't provide 100% uptime. I think it's like 99.999, maybe four nines. I can't remember exactly how many. Whereas Fly's 1 9 or 2 nines. I can't remember one of the two.
But I think for S3, even if he has issues, it's most likely maybe region based or like host based. I don't remember the 8 being that very critical because I
Yeah.
think they
So
try
like,
to make it very scalable.
yeah, you almost never have uptime issues with AWS, right? Like, I mean, they're the leader effectively. They're the largest one out there. They run a good chunk of the internet, right? So at some point, I have to realize like sometimes there might be infrastructure problems, but
Yeah,
I have to do my best as the CTO to mitigate that while also balancing, developer productivity and release cadence and DevOps overhead and cost and all that kind of stuff, right?
yeah. So do you already have a plan? I mean, not migrating fully, but some places I've seen it's more like they try to have this redundancy plan in case this certain component goes down. Like maybe you can spin it off quickly on AWS and route traffic to that one. So maybe those kind of plans, work, but it
Mm-hmm.
depends on how much. If you depend a lot on fly proxy for that, then it will be tricky to replicate that when you have like redundancy outside of fly.io.
Yeah, and redundancy, there's always trade-offs there too, right? Like how much
Yeah,
overhead do you want to introduce into your development team to manage these
yeah,
redundant systems as well, right? Like, and then the cost of the redundant systems, and we just have to, as a small team that is in charge of everything to do with the product, like we have to weigh all of that stuff, right? Redundancy is something that we have been thinking about more, right? What can we do to quickly switch off of something if something else is having an issue. We haven't gotten too far with that really because just resource constraints, right? But it's something that we're thinking about. So yeah, redundancy.
yeah.
But like the issue is like nothing's really quick with AWS, so I can't like quickly spin up services in AWS.
Yeah. I mean, it's all a trade-off. For me, if it depends on how for the one you described here, that one was quite bad, but in some other cases, I'm fine, keeping up because I look at some of the experience I get from it compared to AWS. So, like even though AWS have the reliability sometimes or better because they've had years and years of experience
Mhm.
making this work well. Same with Google. So I try to be more considerate with this field because they try to do things different and new. So a lot of learnings go into those
Mhm.
things, and so but like no one builds a system that is that perfect or bug free. Things happens.
Nope.
Maybe be it deleting GitHub's primary database or issues like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's true. But like the positives of the plot of Fly are numerous. Like it is an absolute joy to work with. Their developer experience is unreal. Like they've simplified our CI/CD so much. So like I know we've talked about a lot of the negatives because of the outages and stuff like that,
Yeah,
but I do
let's
want
talk
to
positive.
like the positive, like the platform's amazing. And
Yeah,
like when after the outages, I emailed them and like you explained our position, was like, listen, like how are you going to build back the trust, right, that you've
yeah,
lost with these recent outages, kind of thing, right? And um, I told them that I was like, I don't want to move off Fly, right? Like
yeah.
I want to stay here. Like I like it so much. Everything's so well thought out. The pricing's clear, everything's built in. Like I don't need to go spin up a load balancer and spin up the auto scaling service and set up this thing and set up that thing to like stitch this all together to serve a node API. I just like
It's just
deploy it.
just yeah, just fly, deploy, and boom, everything works. And if
Yeah.
you want, like the fantastic thing I like about it, before discovering Fly was I never used to think about distributed region deployment because when I read books or videos about it, doing it on AWS or Azure, I just feel like it's not meant for me. You have to
Yeah.
set up availability zones and do all the tricky sorcery you have to do. I'm like, no, I don't want to do this.
It's because those massive platforms they're built for a different scale of company, right?
Yeah.
Like I hope Trellis gets so big that we need these fine-grained, you know, boilerplatey systems, right? Like I hope we get that big, but we're not even remotely close to too big for the simplicity of Fly,
Yeah, but
right?
I think even with that kind of, when you even get that big, you can still, it still works perfectly for you because you don't have to think so much about
Totally.
those availability zones. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but except if maybe you are very enterprise and you want to manage both on premise and on
Yeah.
cloud, then you need more like what AWS gives you because you need more pieces to connect them together.
Mm-hmm.
But
Like,
if
yeah,
everything is in the cloud, I think even if you scale very big, I think Fly makes it very easy.
I wouldn't be surprised, right? And they're going to keep expanding the platform and keep growing the platform, right? So it's just for what we need right now, the platform does all of it. Like we don't have a complicated system. It's like, a handful of different node APIs, some databases, a couple of extra private servers, some Redis caching. Like we're not like doing rocket science over here, right? So like I don't need all the control that AWS gives you. I don't need all those extra services.
I think you describe it as not needing rocket science because of the simplicity Fly gives you. If you are trying to do the same thing on AWS, I think it feels like rocket science because
Oh, absolutely.
you have to configure a lot of smaller components, like
Yeah.
um, let's say you want to deploy a Node app. I don't know if you use Lambda or EC2 or Beanstalk. Even in fact, I don't know if Beanstalk is even the way to go these days because it's
We were on Beanstalk before we moved to Fly, and it's one of the most frustrating platforms I've ever worked with. Like
yeah.
it's
And
so frustrating.
and then you think of application or networking load balancers,
Hmm.
and if you want those things, and you think of logs, and then you have to think of CloudWatch, which quite expensive, and then a couple of things you need extra on the side. And
Yeah, it's
with
crazy.
Fly,
Like it's
with
just it's
Fly,
crazy.
like they have this Fly log shipper that if you want to, you can plug it and you can route your log to multiple sources and works very well. So easy, you control where you ship to. There's
Hmm.
also like a built-in Grafana dashboard. I don't have to think of, oh, I need to set up my own Grafana. I need to think of Prometheus. No, it's all
It's all
built
just
into
there.
the system. And like those were the things that made me really like doing this. Or like AWS, if also the days of lambdas, running a
Mhm.
lot of APIs, and I saw a lot of codes shipping to lambdas, like not just the fact that you can't reproduce locally because it's a separate runtime. You have to also put it behind like API gateway, and you have to configure all those knobs, and it felt very hard. But with Fly, I felt like, so engineering can be this nice.
I can just with Fly, I can focus on building our product,
Yeah.
right? Like I can focus on delivering value to our customers. That's what I can focus on when I use Fly, right?
And if you want some magic, I think things like the Fly proxy, like Fly replay, semantics,
Hmm.
they give you quite some superpowers over there. And if you want to do private networking or like inter-app communication, it's also quite simpler with the Fly proxy.
Hmm.
And sometimes, I check their GitHub repos. Maybe they've published their Fly proxy because I'm curious to see how this really works. You know.
Yeah, it's like it's simple on like Fly, the platform is simple on the surface, right? But they do provide you a lot of granularity like that you don't realize at the start, right? Like once you start digging into the documentation, like they actually do provide you a lot of nitty gritty customizations. It's just you don't need them a lot of the time, right? Like for example, have you ever had to set up like VPC peering with AWS? where you peer from
Okay.
like one VPC to another. Okay, so it's a nightmare. First off, with Fly, like we have a separate. So we have two organization accounts on Fly. We have one for all of our main stuff, and then one for something that needs to be like separated for legal reasons. But it was so easy to make a private connection between the two of them, and now we can call APIs on the private one from the other one over the private Flycast network. And it took me like 10 minutes to
To
set
do,
up,
yeah. I think I
right?
saw your question in the forum when you were trying to do this.
Probably. I posted on there a few times for sure.
Yeah. I mean, that's I think those are the nice things that they've done, and I think anyone building newer platforms, I think they would definitely look at Fly and copy some of them because, like with the CLI, it's nice that they started with the CLI. Maybe not a lot of people will appreciate it because some people prefer like GUIs, but if you manage if you want some controls over how your apps communicate and the deployment, then you'll be happy with the CLI. Sometimes I wish for a better API, like not just the
Absolutely.
GraphQL API. I would have wanted something much better, easier to quickly integrate, but um,
Yeah.
that's the only downside. I think also Koyeb is quite new and going similar way with. I mean, not similar with some of the things that Fly does. That's I think they are also trying to do the same. Like they are the first ones I see do using firecrackers to launch your containers. Or no, we won't not really containers. They are just virtual machines with based
Yeah.
on OCI images and
Yeah, because they build the Firecracker image, I think it's what it's called, from the Docker container, right?
yeah,
That's one of the so that I was going to say that's one of my favorite things about Fly is they manage the remote builders for you. So the Fly deploy command, you're not actually the one building the Docker container.
yeah.
Like Fly's handling that for you. So the the Docker container is being built with the right platform. It's being built in the way that Flying wants it to be built. Like you don't have to worry about you just provided a Docker file, right? And it's just the remote builder. And now it's gotten even better with their depot support. So their CLI is now defaulting to using depot for their Docker builds, and it is fantastic. Oh my god, it's so good.
I never tried the depot one. What do you like about it? The speed
The
or
speed and the caching, and the resulting images are like way smaller. It might be because
ah
depot like I don't know, this is just me guessing, but with the remote builders that Fly had when we first started using Fly, which were literally just Fly machines that they set up for remote building, um, I'm assuming the output of that was the Docker container that was being built. Whereas with Fly, not Fly, with Depot, it seems like the output is like a quarter of the size. So they might be doing some like post processing step or only building certain things they know they're going to use because those get transformed into Firecracker VMs anyway. Right. So they might be leaving out a bunch of like Docker specific stuff that isn't needed because it's going to be Firecracker at the end of the day.
yeah. I mean, I haven't used the
Depot.
depot one directly, but I checked them out a bit, and I think the advantage is the caching because
Mm-hmm.
layer. So with the remote builders, you are building on the remote on the fly remote build remote machine, and I think it doesn't really cache your images. So
There is a certain amount of caching, but
yeah,
not quite
but
as much as Depot.
yeah,
Also, you're using Fly Deploy, right? Obviously.
yeah,
Depot's the default now.
yeah, but I haven't. Oh, it's the default now for starting from which version?
That is a
Because I
great
think
question,
I
actually.
think the last time I checked it, it was still optional. So I didn't use the deeper one,
Let's
but
find
I
out.
think most of the speed comes from the caching because that's what a lot of these tools do. Like like things like Turbo Pack, NX, and all. I think once you make good use of the caching layers, especially if your Docker has multi-stage layers and that can be cached, It also makes the build way faster. And
Totally.
yeah,
Totally.
but
It
those
looks
are
like September 10th is when they announced it was becoming default.
oh yeah. I think
So like
I haven't
that's a
updated
little
my
while ago.
CLI. Yeah,
CLI also auto updates now. So you might be using Depot and not even know it.
probably. Yeah. Yeah, but I think those are like the nice features because also when I built flycd.dev, I I just made good use of the remote builder because I didn't have to think about, oh, where do I deploy people's images and all, and just makes use of their organization remote builders and push it is there. If there's in rare, very rare occasions where the remote builders are problematic, it's just deleting the app and then retrying the build. And those are like the nice stuff. I try to check their repo to see, oh, how do they make these remote builders work as well, just in case I need something like that outside of Fly, it's easier to just replicate.
Yeah.
But
I mean, like, if you want something outside of Fly that's a remote builder, I would say just use Depot directly, right? Like Depot's integrated into Fly now, but it is a separate service, just like Upstash or
yeah,
Tigris or Superbase and all that kind of stuff. That it's just one of their partners. You can use Depot outside of Fly. It's just like a remote API for Dockerizing things.
yeah,
I don't know. I had never have because I just use it through Fly, obviously. But if someone's looking for a remote builder, just use Depot. It seems to be working great for me through Fly anyway.
yeah. I think before I saw Depot, there was one other one. Like I think maybe either the one from Self Actuated or something similar, where they also try to make GitHub actions faster. But I think
Mm,
they took a different. So Depot is more like from the Docker build part. They try to make Docker build faster, but also added caching. But I think the other ones try to give you like a faster GitHub Actions runner. So with a faster machine and less, like I think also dedicated machines they build faster. So those are something worth checking out anyway.
totally, totally.
Yeah. So what were you? I know you mentioned one of the challenges living with AWS, like setting up VPCs and all that. But what prompted you looking into Fly.io?
So a big one was the cost. Fly is way cheaper. Like they've obviously built a platform that allows them to run cheaper than a lot of the AWS services we were using. Now, maybe that might be, an Elastic Beanstalk problem and not an AWS problem. I'm not sure. But one was cost and two was developer experience, like simplicity. Fly is just so much easier to use. It's easier to deploy to. As the DevOps person at Trellis that also handles a lot of other things, like Fly just makes it so much easier for me to manage our infrastructure, right? Versus
Yeah.
AWS. Everything with AWS is complicated and just like more complicated than it needs to be for our specific case. Like I understand like how they've gotten to where they're at. Like I get it because they've built different services for decades and they've layered them all on top of one another. And you can do pretty much anything you want with AWS if you have the time and the capacity, right? But
Yeah.
we don't need the vast majority of the platform, right? Like we have just some basic APIs to deploy. So Fly just made that like dumbly easy for me to do.
Yeah. And how was your CI/CD on AWS compared to, and how is it now different now using Fly.io?
Yeah. So um, when we were on AWS, we we had to build our own Docker containers, right? So we built those on our CI, and then we pushed them to ECR, and then we created Beanstalk versions and deployed those versions with the environment to like or update the environments with the new application versions. And so there's like this multi-step process tying together different APIs, right? Little things like when you push a new application version to Beanstalk, like the command that pushes it isn't the one that also like waits for it to be green and healthy. You then need to like call another one to like wait for it to be healthy kind of thing, right? So like all of that is a single command with fly. So I got to remove the actual Docker builds from our CI. I got to remove pushing the images to ECR, and I got to remove that like multi-step deploy and wait for a healthy process. It's all just fly deploy now. So vastly, vastly simpler.
Very simple. And also, you don't have to pay more because you don't have to pay for ECR.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
But I think you for your CI you use Circle CI, right? Because I see you tweet about
Mm-hmm.
it a bit. Looks
Yep.
like they've been getting on your nerves lately as well.
I don't know if it's them or if it's like the node mirrors or what, but like, damn, node fails to install a lot of the times. Oh my God, it's so frustrating. I had one run for 3 hours yesterday without me realizing it, just stuck on the installing node step for some reason. I was like, oh, why is this a problem?
And do they know about this or are they trying to fix it?
I don't know. I should report it, but I haven't. I don't know. I haven't reported it. I know I should report it,
But
but
why?
I just
Why?
complained publicly about it.
Yeah, I think I don't know anyone using Circle CI anymore. Uh, I think most people I know, at least for open source, are on GitHub Action.
Hmm.
But aside that, in Germany, the places I work, maybe they use internally Jenkins CI because most people, some organizations still have their own on premise, because of some EU. I don't know
Hmm.
if it's because of data governance or just the traditional sense of European or German companies. So Jenkins, the more modern ones like agencies, they were running on GitHub Actions and using Vercel.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know if I've seen any other one besides those two.
Those are like the main ones that I've seen for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in the past I've used like Travis, and
Yeah.
I think Travis and one other one, but I think they already shut down those products. But it's
I've
nice.
like I've only ever used Circle CI,
Oh.
so I don't know. Yeah, it works good enough that I'm not going to spend the engineering time to swap over, right? Like we have so
Yeah.
much CI CD set up that like I just don't want to go recreate it somewhere else. It works perfectly fine for us.
Have you tried Dagger?
Dagger? No, I haven't.
Maybe you can also. I don't know if it will help with the node issue, but it's kind of like Docker for CI or
Oh, okay.
CI/CD, but it needs to run on a CI. So they have like maybe in Circle CI probably have ops, and then
Hmm.
On GitHub Action they have the actions that
Right.
you set up, and then it sets up Dagger, but then Dagger kind of runs within like a container setup to make all your CI process like reproducible, just like Docker. And I think there's
Hmm.
also like where you can do caching to make
Ah,
subsequent runs also faster.
yeah, yeah.
So maybe that could help with the. I don't know how the node stuff works with this one, but hopefully it gets resolved.
Totally. Yeah, it's all a balance of resources, right? Like
Yeah.
we're in our busiest season of the year for my company right now. So the last thing I'm doing is altering our CI/CD process. We're just trying to stay above water with like
Yeah.
bug reports and feature requests and like busy days of fundraising events and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
maybe
And
in the
I
new year.
mean I guess the Node.js issue just happens very rarely, like with every CI, like just once in
Yeah,
a while.
there's stuff like I couldn't even imagine managing a CI/CD company like from a technical point of view. So like I'm going to afford them some grace because I don't want to do that job. It sounds way too complicated. So
Yeah, I get like email notification when some AWS services are like not AWS, GitHub services are down. I get the emails so often, but sometimes I feel, are they really that unreliable? But it just gets resolved within minutes or maximum an hour. And maybe it's also just isolated to maybe a particular region or set of customers. So I think most of these complex engineering efforts are quite very hard to to do. So kudos to people that are doing the hard work.
Absolutely. Oh
I
yeah,
mean, we
100%.
also do hard work, but some things are really really like very hard, especially if you have people relying on you, like from a cloud company perspective. So
Oh yeah, like cloud hosting, CI/CD. I do not want to build and run a company around like automated infrastructure type stuff. Like that does not, like, props to everybody that does it, because I don't want to do that.
I like tinkering on the automation part and trying to build something fancy or understand how it works. But when I think of like having to carry around the pager, that also makes me like, no, I don't want to have to to be an SRE by force.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. I feel that.
I'm curious, how much cost did you guys save when you moved over from AWS?
Probably like $1,000 a month.
Oh, that's quite
Thousand
a good
thousand
chunk.
USD a month, probably. Yeah.
And also, if you calculate the man hours in the CI and every other stuff too, that means also
Everything
more.
else is faster. So yeah, we get cost reductions on CI/CD. We get developer productivity boosts, right? Like everything's just. I don't spend many minutes even finding where I'm supposed to go in the AWS dashboard, right? Just like the sum of all my time I spend navigating AWS services has been reduced. So
Yeah, I can't even imagine how bad that is. It's been a long time on AWS, so sometimes when I see some gig that mentions like AWS or GCP, and I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. I would like to think out some automation stuff, but I don't want to go back to having that feeling, like with Fly, like building Fly CD and all. I just have to figure out like APIs and CLIs and couple together a couple of bash script or or code to make things work the way I want it, and just feels easier to do. And also I don't have to worry about other extra stuff that I would do like
Mhm.
on GCP. Like GCP, my last nightmare was like, having to manage multiple accounts was like crazy because you have to, I don't even remember, you have to the, just to delete something simple. I have to go through a lot of steps to do the deletion. And
Yep. The
also
big
my,
three are all awful in their own ways. Like
yeah,
Azure's awful, GCP's awful, AWS is awful, all in their own unique ways.
yeah. And people prefer to rotate between the big three, like AWS, GCP.
I
My
don't want to
last,
get to the point where I'm good at all three. That just is, that's not a world that I want to live in.
well, because you work for your own company, but if you are in the job market, you have to do all these
hmm
AWS certifications and try to figure out like AWS architecture and all, and it's a different world out there, you know.
Yep. Maybe I'll be forced to one day. Who knows? Right?
Hopefully not.
Yeah, I'm really hoping not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool, cool. I mean, it's been nice, talking about this. Before we wrap up, I would love to, chat about a bit on or catch up also on your side project. I think after our last call, you were talking about some AI stuff, and then the last time we spoke again, or some weeks ago, you messaged about
Mhm.
doing distributed logs. So what's going on the side?
So I have a couple irons in the fire right now. One of the ones I just, 1 weekend I was like, I'm gonna learn Go and the language. I was like, what can I build? We recently had we were trying to figure out how to do distributed locks wells. So like Redlock would be probably the one that people know the most. And I was like, I wonder if I could build a distributed block as a service, like a hosted distributed block of sorts, right? Like a serverless one, kind of like how Upstash did it. So I was like, I'm gonna write a distributed block and go. So I did it. I wrote it. It functions. So now I'm just like working on thinking about how I'm going to actually like launch it. Like I'm dreading building like a website for it because that is just not my skill. I might just use like bolt.new and just like generate myself a website for it. But that's kind of on pause right now because I don't want to go build the actual, like I don't want to like do all the rest of the work. Like I built the system and it functions surprisingly well. So that's really cool. And learning Go is awesome. And then the other one, I'm kind of just like, playing around with, like, everyone's talking about AI and learning about AI and stuff like that, right? But one of my favorite hobbies that I do is I play Magic the Gathering, the card game.
Okay.
So I was like, I wonder if I can apply AI to Magic. So I've been like, building some random things like an AI search engine for Magic cards and like like an AI judge ruling, because Magic is so complicated with the rules that when you go to events, for example, they actually have judges there because people have rules questions. So I was like, I wonder if I could like build an AI that could answer these like really, really complex, in-depth Magic questions kind of thing. So I've just been like kind of playing around with that and learning about all the different tools and techniques. And I tell you, they change like every week. It's really hard to keep up, especially when you have a full-time job.
Keep up with the game or with AI? Most likely with
actually
AI.
both. Actually both. Yeah. The game changed. Like the game doesn't change, but there's always like so many new cards. But like AI,
Yeah, you can't keep up.
there's new stuff constantly.
I've chosen to be ignorant on the engineering part of AI
Fair.
and just be a user because it's so much to learn new stuff. And I'm just trying to figure out, okay, what is it that, even if AI is dominant, like would still be relevant, in our industry today because everything is changing really fast. You also have to look ahead and also make yourself relevant like 3 years from now if with the way layoffs are happening and people are cutting down budget. So it's quite
Yep.
I'm just more ignorant and trying to, figure out some other engineering aspects, like lately I've been tinkering with like web performance, CDN,
Nice.
but uh, sometimes I'm doing that, but sometimes I'm also looking at other things like trying a new programming language. I don't know if you heard of Gleam.
I've heard of it.
Yeah, so I like the concept, although it's very strange because it's functional and different from
Mm.
JavaScript and C Sharp that
Mhm.
I used to use. But trying to keep up with it as well and doing other stuff I do, it's like very complex, and I just left it for now. Try to do other stuff. But I'm curious about Go now. So since you
Go is
you
really fun.
yeah, how
It's a
long did
really
it
cool
take you
language.
to learn Go?
Couple of days.
Okay.
Yeah, I built the distributed block in like a weekend.
Okay.
So I used ChatGPT to like ask questions. Like instead of reading Go documentation, I was just like, I want to do this. How do I do it in Go? And then I'd go like try it out in my editor, and then I'd get to the point where something wasn't working right, or I'm like, oh, now I don't know how to, call a function in this way. So then I go back to the AI and be like, okay, I have this. I want to call a function or do the thing and Go. How do I do that? And then I would just like flip flop back and forth. And then eventually, like, because I write so much code for a living, right? You kind of just pick up on the patterns and the way that, like,
Yeah, you are.
oh, this is how Go does these sorts of things. So I'm sure I can figure out how to do the next piece. But then I'd hit a blocker and then I'd go ask AI instead of reading documentation because I hate reading documentation.
Yeah, that would be nice. I mean, I'm not trying to learn Go because I think I love it, but um, just I think 2 days ago I was just thinking about like building something just for fun or for also personal use and see how valuable it will be with the whole exodus to self-hosted
Mm-hmm.
BPS and all. Some we're thinking of how can if it's possible to make like the fly experience, like with the CLI and all, but or your own either bare metal or private
I would
virtual servers.
highly suggest learning Go. I had a great time learning it. Yeah,
Yeah, so
great time.
that was the reason, because also like I think building CLIs with it is nicer, and also some of this cloud native tooling, most of them are on Go. So and with Go, you don't have to. I think you just import them like as packages, like npm.
Hmm.
So kind of like if you want to use fly CTL in Go, you can just import the packages and
Oh,
make
that's
the
cool.
calls. So
Yeah,
instead of like if you use JavaScript, you have to now make like a shell script and call the
that's what we
CLI
do.
itself.
Yeah,
But with Go, you can just call them like packages or even reference packages directly on GitHub and just call the code. So those were why I was thinking, trying to use Go.
yeah.
Yeah.
Do it. It's great. It was super fun.
Yeah, but well, it's still something I'm deciding if when I would get to the project, because it's
Fair.
the project that would make me. I have a separate one. I'm also thinking if I should work on, but maybe I get your opinion on that. Which so I'm trying to do. I saw this project. Let me share it with you. It was an interesting one. So the person built re-implemented Redis with SQLite,
Oh, I saw that.
but not all the whole features of Redis, just most of
Hmm.
the data structures and
Yeah,
transactions and what. So I was thinking of doing something similar with in JavaScript to like see how nice it to play with JavaScript
that's cool.
and,
That's cool. I like that. Yeah.
and but using a different. So instead of SQLite, I'm thinking of using LMDB
I
because
am.
I don't know if you know LMDB.
I think I've heard of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I tried it a bit. I mean, because I have also a different package I built with it, and I think it's quite fast. So I was thinking of building, doing something similar, but using JavaScript and LMDB to see, okay, how well will this play out, and maybe for cases where you need something like the data structures of Redis, but you don't want to stand up a full Redis server, it might really play nice, especially if
Totally.
it doesn't depend on memory. So
Yeah.
those were the two things I'm
It's
thinking. Okay,
cool.
I need to pick one and do something.
Do it.
Which one do you like better?
Mm, I mean, like for experimental reasons, I think I like the like Redis idea, like
Okay,
the JavaScript Redis one. You also already know JavaScript, right? So it's like, do
yeah,
you want to learn a new language or do you not want to learn a new language, right? Like I liked learning Go because it was super fun, and I don't know many other languages, not well enough to actually write something in them, right? But now I do. But if you want to like get started and actually like prototyping something quickly, then like go with the JavaScript Redis one because you already know the language. So
yeah. I'll try it. If I get to it, I will send to you to do some
do
testing.
it. That sounds great.
Yeah. So I mean, we can wrap up a bit. Thanks a lot for the time. It was nice to chat with you about your migration uh, story. Any other last bits you would like to add before we wrap up?
Try Fly. If you haven't tried Fly, you should try Fly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
Plus one on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you for
So
having me on,
what?
Peter. I appreciate it.
Where can people find you on social? So for anyone that wants to follow you, I know you do also Angular stuff, and maybe people will be interested in that stuff as well.
Yeah, at J Cooper Bell is my handle on Twitter or X, whatever. Um, it's yeah, I think it's the same on Blue Sky if that's a you thing as well. Just search J Cooper Bell. I'm sure I'll come up. But yeah,
Yeah,
I spend most of my time on Twitter.
I dropped the link on the chat, and yeah, it was nice chatting with you. See, I will be looking out for whatever new AI stuff you're also building as well. And have a nice Halloween if you celebrate that.
Yeah, I'm not sure what I'm doing yet, but I'm not going trick or treating. I can tell you that. I'm a little old for trick or treating, but
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Peter. I appreciate it. It's good talking to you.
Thank you. Have a nice evening.
Yeah, you as well.
Bye bye. See you.